Welcome to this session on industrial collaboration. This is going to be presented by myself, Roland Plett, and Keith Heggaton from Instant Connect. We're going to talk about industrial collaboration. Keith is actually the only kind of pseudo-external partner that we have joining us for this summit. And part of that is because Instant Connect used to be part of Cisco, and Keith used to be part of Cisco, and we actually felt that the Instant Connect product could be better served if it was independent, and we've continued to actually collaborate, to pardon the pun, I suppose, with the Instant Connect team very closely. Is Keith with us already?
Yeah, Roland, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, awesome. Good to hear you, Keith. Keith is going to take you through some of the Instant Connect pieces here in a little bit. I'm going to do a couple of slides of introduction. But Keith is part of the Instant Connect team. I know there's some of the customers that are on today that actually have Instant Connect in their environment, and you might have some pointed questions you want to ask the Instant Connect team. I think Wes is with us as well from Instant Connect to answer some questions. If you have Instant Connect specific ones, that'd be cool. For those who don't know what Instant Connect is, Instant Connect is really an extension of the Cisco call environment, right, into push-to-talk environments. So the modernization of push-to-talk has been going on for a while, but it's definitely not complete. There are lots of push-to-talk systems that still need to be modernized, and Instant Connect is one option that you have to actually modernize your push-to-talk system and connect it into the existing calling environment. And so we want to take you through a little bit of that here in the next half hour. All right. I want to start by just calling out that Cisco is still in the calling business. That might seem like an odd statement coming from me, but over the last couple of years, we've seen so much press and so much immersion into the whole WebEx world and other video conferencing platforms that I think sometimes we forget that there's a whole foundation and whole backbone of collaboration and communication that happens with phones, right? And I just need to call out that we've got 100 million phones in circulation. Like, that's a lot of endpoints that are designed for voice calling, right? A lot of them also do video, but they were born into the whole voice environments. You see these in your operation centers, in your lunchrooms, and underground. You see them in your safe rooms and other places. These are phones that connect to a voice calling system that's on premise, and Cisco still leads that market, and we still develop features for that market, and we still develop endpoints for that market. And that whole calling communications manager market is still very much central to Cisco's industrial collaboration strategy, right? And you're right, we do have that solution in the cloud, but we also have that solution with hosting partners. We have that solution on premise at mine sites, at processing plants, and so you don't need to be thinking about, oh, well, I'm not moving to the cloud, so I'm missing out. Well, you know what? For the carpeted space, that might be the trend we're seeing. But from an industrial perspective, we still need to do a lot of on-site collaboration that can't necessarily go on in the cloud, depending on the connectivity options that you have at your site, okay? For those who aren't familiar with Communications Manager, there's a whole engine of software that manages all of the call control for voice, video, IM, and presence in the Cisco ecosystem, right? So that's one big software engine that either lives on premise, it lives at a hosting company, or it lives in the cloud. And that is actually somewhat separate, but very tightly integrated with WebEx. So those of you who know WebEx, obviously you're on WebEx right now. That is a piece or an extension or an instantiation of this call control in the cloud that has all of these meeting features around it, all of the call center features around it. There's a bunch of very rich application environments that are packaged under the WebEx umbrella. So there is a ton of stuff happening there, right? What I wanted to make very sure that all of you understand is this calling cluster and environment is still very, very much alive and well, right? And it interacts and interoperates with the WebEx environment beautifully, okay? A lot of that has to do with SIP connections between this core and a bunch of different kinds of endpoints. But it's also more than that. It also interacts with a bunch of other applications as well through APIs and through gateways, right? So this is a very comprehensive ecosystem that we built over the last number of years. And really what it's developed into for you as a user is that if you're working at home like I am, and you can kind of see my little office here, I'm actually on one of the devices you see in the bottom right hand. That's who you're seeing me off of a camera from that device, right? But I'm actually have it tied to my laptop like you see on the left, right? And I've actually got my WebEx client running on my laptop, and it's actually communicating with my endpoint. So there's a lot of really rich, interaction going on there, right? If I had a phone, which I don't anymore, it could be sitting on my desk as well, and it could be part of this same ecosystem. So when I pick up the phone, it actually starts a call from my persona, whether it's from my phone or from my laptop or from my video unit that you're watching me on, okay? That interacts with meeting rooms. So if I have my phone if I have my cell phone with me and I walk into a meeting room, the meeting room actually recognizes me and actually shows my picture on the board and says, would you like to actually connect to your meeting from this meeting room unit instead? So the integration is really, really quite marvelous. It's amazing where it's come from if you've been kind of following all this technology over the last sort of 5 years, right? Now, what does that mean for industrial environments? Because all of this has been happening in the carpeted space, and we've got all of these endpoints that you can get for all kinds of different environments, whether it's your office, whether it's a meeting room, whether it's a large conferencing space. All of these things connect into the same communication platform. What this slide doesn't show is all the third-party integrations. So the third-party WebEx integrations like RealWare and others, right? All the third-party SIP endpoints that you can connect into this system. And all of that can actually integrate into this whole ecosystem that I talked about, right? And Instant Connect has actually done an incredible job of leveraging this ecosystem into very dirty in industrial sites, right? And so I want to call on Keith at this point to take us over the next 20 minutes to kind of take us through the Instant Connect story and where it's at now. So even if you knew about Instant Connect 2-3 years ago, there's stuff that's happened since then, right? And so Keith, do you want me to just drive the slides, or did you want to share from your end?
No, please do, Roland. That's great, and really
Okay.
appreciate the time and opportunity.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So as a great setup,
a little bit. I didn't really introduce you at the beginning, so
no worries. Great tee up, and delighted to be here. As Roland mentioned, my name's Keith Heggaton. I'm the partner account manager in Instant Connect, if you will, and work really closely with Cisco, trying to stay current with the way that the market's changing and shifting, and making sure that Instant Connect can stay aligned to larger strategic initiatives within Cisco. We're really after trying to provide as much value to our joint customers as possible. Roland mentioned that the product was initially a Cisco product. It was formerly known as iPix, and the firm that I work for is still in Kane Group here in Chicago. We acquired the asset a little over 4 years ago. We've put a lot of effort into re-architecting it into a modern architecture as much as we could, but still maintaining that heritage with being a Cisco compatible solution and working with all of the elements that Roland just pointed out. So we like to think that we kept the best of iPix, and to Roland's earlier point as well, we kind of created some new exciting things that we think are going to really push the market forward to help modernize the push-to-talk space. So if you don't mind going to the next slide, Roland, that'd be great. Oh, and I should stop too. Wes Wells is on. He's Instant Connect's product manager. In the event any technical questions come up, he's going to keep me honest, and he'll be able to answer kind of the nuts and bolts and the nitty-gritty should they arise. But I I think
It's already got Wes deep into the questions here, so let him have it.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's great. So this slide kind of speaks to the partnership that we have with Cisco. We're a Solutions Plus partner, so we're available on the global price list. We also enjoy having that compatible solutions designation as well. So we work with things like Call Manager that Roland mentioned. And this slide really, I think, encapsulates a lot of what's happening in the market today. There's a large push to hybrid work. Doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. And what we do at Instant Connect is truly connect the knowledge worker with the frontline worker. And we do that through two kind of core tenets to the product itself. The one is what we've spoken to. It's kind of one common communication environment for any device, any network, anywhere. So that's radio to radio, that's radio to IP device. And then that's also getting the radio signal to go over the IP network. So you're talking about, a Kenwood can talk to a Tate. A Tate can talk to a WebEx IP phone, all in one common environment, and we can do that through Instant Connect. And the other tenet or the core is something that's a bit newer, and it's a rules engine that we've created. And really what it is it leverages an organization's current standard operating procedures. You write the rules yourself based on your business, and then it can automate in real time collaboration sessions, if you will, again, across devices, across networks, connecting the right people at the right time when it matters most. A lot of IoT sensors and systems today have alerting, but it's typically SMS or email notifications. So really, at the end of the day, it's hard to really measure the criticality of the event. And we've often seen in the field, I'm not calling anyone out personally, but workers will swipe the push notifications aside and sometimes miss very critical messages that they should be acting on. So Gartner actually named Instant Connect a cool vendor in frontline technologies last year for this ability to essentially create these on-the-fly, real-time, automated talk groups based on a rules engine that the organization controls to really establish a digitized path forward for SOPs. So now if I have someone that's in an area that's been deemed unsafe, if I have a truck leaving a site too early, if I have a lone worker type of scenario, there's a myriad of types of examples you could walk through. But now you're starting to automate some of these workflows in real time, where historically it would have been manual. Someone back in the network operations center remote would have had to have been maybe radioed in. They would have had to take their radio. They would have had to look at who's on the site, at a roster, maybe it's on paper. This all takes time. And in the event that it's a critical event that needs response, not to be cliche, but every second counts. So you'll see some of the bullets on the slide. I won't talk through all of them, but really at the end of the day, it definitely serves the purpose of push to talk, as it always historically did. It still serves the purpose of radio interoperability and radio over IP. But this rules engine is what's kind of propelling us into the future and helping to modernize this collaboration stack to really start to get added value out of the broader Cisco ecosystem. So you can start to think of the IoT operator dashboard, industrial asset vision, Cisco DNA spaces. There's a slew of products that have dashboards today that create trigger events that Instant Connect could take advantage of and create these real-time talk groups. So I'll take a pause there, Roland. I don't know if that kind of,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I haven't been keeping up with you on the slides here. Let me just actually kind of flip through them here and see if we missed anything.
This one's great. Sorry. This one speaks to the customers that are using it around the globe today. And maybe if Wes is on and he has a mic, he might be able to speak to some of the maybe not specific customers, but the fact that customers in the mining space are seeing real value from the Instant Connect product today. So this isn't just a forward-looking statement being made by a third-party vendor. It is getting real use and utility in the field, and perhaps it'll kind of spur some use case conversations that'll kind of be toward the back end of the slide deck. We can start to really drill.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw some of these customers on earlier, so I know they're in the audience. So great call out. Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know, Wes, if you're there and able to speak, is there anything that you might be able to add a little bit of commentary to as far as some of the specific mining customer use cases that we see today, and really kind of the value that's being kind of derived from Instant Connect in real world application?
No, I mean, you're absolutely right, Keith. A lot of the, customers, in these pin drops that we have on this slide here are customers that are utilizing our technology, and the use cases that they're using our technology in is, a couple of different ones. One, as you pointed out, is, radio augmentation, the ability to take an IP client and have it be able to communicate out over a radio system, adds great value in extending the RF footprint of that radio system into areas where RF, is not available to those users. The other one is all location based, with the GPS, and location capabilities within our client. We can now map, where those users are at. And then based on those locations, we can create a geofence around an area that's an unsafe area, an area that's is gonna be set up, for a blast in a mine, location, so that we can make sure, via that location and the alerting on that geofence, that users are aware that they may be entering an area that is unsafe.
That's great. That's great.
So talk to me, you kind of jumped over the dynamic device, all the different devices that kind of map into this ecosystem. Talk to me a little bit about how all this stuff works together, right? So you've got a camera on a hard hat there, and you've got a bunch of push to talk, systems that are plugged into, I'm guessing, sort of Android smartphones or whatever. And then you've got a Cisco phone sitting there. Like, how do these things interact with each other?
So right down at the core of it, all of these different devices, the smartphones, whether it's Android or iOS, we have a client that can run on those devices. And, they are IP connected devices. So they connect to the IP network, whether it's through, a MAN-A network, a mobile ad hoc network, a Wi-Fi network, or an LTE network. We can run on any of those different networks. And then same thing, with the IP phone. The Cisco phone it's an IP client as well. And then we have an XML client that will run on that IP phone as an XML service. So a user running the XML service.
Sorry. So you actually have an Instant Connect plugin for the IP desk phone.
Yes, sir.
Cool. So if you have an actual video display or one of these the LCD displays on your phone, you could actually have talk groups, associated with those buttons and that kind of thing.
Correct. Yeah. So when a user logs into the XML service, based upon the credentials that are set up by the administrator, when they're authenticated to the system, they'll get a list of channels, that have been assigned to their user, and then they can select, from that list of channels, what channel they want to operate on, and then within the 4 buttons that are part of the XML service, one of them would be a start push to talk, and then an end push to talk. So now they can communicate out on that selected channel. Even if that channel is associated with a radio talk group, then their transmission would go out to a radio system as well.
And is this isn't limited to a specific site, right? I mean, you could have people at a head office somewhere in actually communicating with mine push to talk systems. Like hundreds of miles away.
Absolutely. As long as there's a network connectivity between those client devices, doesn't matter where they're located at, on the IP network. Even across, a VPN, link around the world, as long as there's IP connectivity, we can tie them together.
So very cool. So let's talk a little bit about, and I know Matt's going to talk a bit more about actual collaboration systems and how that system works with the procedures and stuff that workers have. But push to talk has really become almost an intrinsic part of workforce kind of processes on the work site, right? So does that mean now that really anybody in the organization that's part of this communication system can actually participate in those processes? I guess that's the extension here, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Roland, I don't mean to speak out of turn, but I just want to say in the past, that's what customers have really cued in on, is they could have their global engineering group in EMEA and they're doing shutdown turnarounds in the Americas, and they can have their engineering guys listen in on the shutdown turnaround operations so they know what's happening and they're available to those guys on the field that are actually doing the work.
Cool.
Yeah.
So this is Matt that's talking here. I think Keith and Matt, you know each other. And Matt's going to be speaking next on some of the collaboration pieces that go beyond this into applications. No, that's a great comment and call out there, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
Good to hear you that you're on, and that means that we're going to be ready to transition to your stuff here in a few minutes. So talk to me a little bit more about the automation piece, because this global communication talk group thing is super powerful already, and just with the example that Matt gave there, the automation piece that you referenced, Keith, though, that's a little bit of a different thing. Gives you the ability to not necessarily rely on human progression for a specific process, but you can actually automate and put queues into the system. Give me an example of kind of how that would work.
So what will keep me honest and maybe add some additional context. At the end of the day, if you think about it, the nerve center of a mine, it's that network operations center. It's remote. Folks are looking at CCTV screens and they have a myriad of applications they have to run. And again, it's really, if the event is critical and a response needs to happen immediately and a person's in the process, well, that can delay response times. And to your point, PTT is ubiquitous across this industry and many others. And I think that the reality is because it needs to happen in real time or as near real time as possible. So this rules engine essentially has those standard operating procedures that an organization can write into it. And it can do a bevy of things. It can be based on date and time. So it's a reoccurring schedule. It could be based on an inbound webhook. So if a third-party IoT sensor sends a webhook, Instant Connect can ingest that and respond in kind by sending an alert, a message, a notification, or creating a real-time dynamic talk group. That's the phraseology that we use at Instant Connect, is a dynamic talk group. So essentially it pulls in the right resource at the right time, because another challenge with radios is there's chatter. I mean, you may have limited channels and you're probably tuned out. Let's go back to that same concept around the SMS and the email notifications kind of being ignored if you're being really kind of inundated with them, because how do you find the signal in the noise? So Instant Connect can do that for an organization. If you have this real-time talk group that pops up and you're part of it, it's important. And now you know what the event is, the right stakeholders are involved across geography, across the organization, so that you're communicating in real time. Because again, what is it? Upwards of 90% of people prefer to communicate by voice based on the criticality of the event, right? The asynchronous messaging is fantastic. But if it's a critical response that's required, it needs to be voice and it needs to be real time.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Let's talk a bit more about this location feature. Now, obviously, those automated processes and stuff you talked about, they can be triggered based on kind of where you are and what zone you're walking into or whatever. But how does this happen? Like if it's GPS based, that of course only allows you to operate above ground. Are there other, location type technologies you're able to leverage underground?
Yeah, so we can receive, location, from, Wi-Fi, location, devices, based upon, Wi-Fi triangulation. We can also use, Bluetooth beacons, that are set up, for location tracking underground also.
Yeah.
So we don't have to just rely on GPS only. As long as the Android device or iOS device can get a location, from another, mechanism, our application will take that location information, send it up to our, workflow automation server, and then that location is updated accordingly.
Oh, cool. Okay, so that's kind of what you mean by the third point here, right? Is that you can have sensors that actually trigger some of this stuff, by proximity kind of thing. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
For location. Also on this third bullet point here is, IoT sensors, can be any type of IoT sensor, a door opening, when it shouldn't be opening, could be a security violation, that we could trigger a,
Right.
an event off of, a pressure valve is, reaching a threshold, to where there may be a failure on that, pressure valve or that sensor, we can trigger workflow automation off of that also. So pretty much anything that's being monitored, by an IoT sensor, we can, we have the capability once we receive that webhook, from that dashboard to be able to trigger, set up an alert, we can, set up a, channel and automatically create a talk group, with the right people that need to be involved, to handle that event.
Very cool.
Roland,
Yeah.
if I may interject for a second, we have some questions out there in regards to GPS location technologies, underground mine, surface. Obviously, we know how that can handle. So you have a solution, Wes or Keith, on how that could be taken care of or ratified?
Yeah, like I said, we can, take advantage of, Wi-Fi proximity, if the Wi-Fi, that's set up underground, if there's a Wi-Fi underground, we can take advantage of that. We've also have, customers that use Bluetooth beacons, for location tracking as well. And, we can get that location information from that Bluetooth beacons as well and pass it on.
One of the use cases we see is radio replacement, just full out radio replacement, and it's applicable to oil and gas and in mining as well. And my understanding is APs get run, is that you got to run coax cable underground for radios. It gets expensive and it's not necessarily effective long term. So that's kind of what we've heard from our customers, is that they'll use the access points underground and then to tie back to what Wes said, it triangulates the signal based on that to get you pretty close. And then there's hard hats and Bluetooth beacons. I think even RealWear has something to that effect too. And it's a really easy integration for us to perform. So
Very cool.
Thanks for that time, Roland. We really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, this has been really a great treat. When I introduced the session today, I talked about how digital operations is the foundation for agility, and we really need the agility to deal with the massive amounts of change happening in the industry today. And really, this is a classic example of that, right? Where you're able to be so much more responsive when you digitize this, radio system and are able to tie in all these applications. So this has been really, really cool. Thank you very much to Keith and Wes for joining us. And thank you for joining us for this session on industrial collaboration. Next up is a conversation about Secure Mobile Worker, brought to us by Matt Nalbone of the IoT sales team. To watch this session, please click on the next video.